Okay, we're taking another live look at Pittsburgh right now, where Vice President Kamala Harris is set to give one of her last big speeches on the eve of this election. It's the point in a campaign where everyone is basically out of gas, they're just running on caffeine, bad pizza, adrenaline, whatever. And the candidate has to dig deep to give one more speech, make their last best case to the American people. So as we wait for the vice president, I'm reminded of another historic candidate making his closing case. Here's Barack Obama in 2008, firing up one last crowd.
So, Virginia, I just have one word for you. Just one word. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Tomorrow you can put an end to the politics that would divide a nation just to win an election. That pits region against region, city against town, Republican against Democrat. That asks us to fear at a time when we need to hope. Tomorrow, at this defining moment in history, Virginia, you can give this country the change that we need. It starts here in Virginia. It starts here in Manassas. This is where change begins.
A lot of that still rings very true today, and I remember that night like it was yesterday. I was there. I suspect folks on the Harris campaign will remember it tonight just as well. Michael Steele is the former chairman of the RNC and host of The Weekend here on MSNBC. Lis Smith is a longtime Democratic strategist, and Jon Favreau served as Barack Obama's chief speechwriter. He probably wrote those remarks. He's also a co-founder of Crooked Media and a co-host of Pod Save America. Okay, so I wanted to play that because it is this moment that if you're on a campaign, you've done all of the things. You've got to get out the people tomorrow. That's what you're thinking about. But I've blocked out a lot of these nights from my memory. It's like you're so tired you don't even remember.
I don't want to go back.
I don't even remember. Okay, so Liz, you're on the Harris campaign. What's going through your minds? They're at desks. They're eating bad pizza. They're watching the rally. What are they doing right now?
Eating bad pizza, chugging 5-hour energy, Red Bull, all that sort of stuff. But I think they've got to be feeling pretty good about where things are. And it tells you a lot about where the two campaigns are closing. Mm-hmm. She's closing on a very optimistic, uplifting, energetic message. And she is filling these arenas, whereas Trump is closing on a dark dystopian message with that bro-tastic, to take your term, thing at MSG. He is embracing wholeheartedly RFK Jr., who is one of the most polarizing figures.
And take the fluoride out of drinking water for our kids, Liz.
Right, exactly, and control women's and children's health. So she's closing on a message I think is very broad, and that is appealing to a lot of people. He's closing on a dark, sad message with, frankly, the one superpower he always seemed to have in politics was his ability to have these huge crowds. Mm-hmm. It's gone. And so anecdotally, empirically, there's a lot of evidence that the momentum is on her side and that he's run out of steam.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, we've all been a part of so many campaigns, winning campaigns, losing campaigns, and there are things you watch, crowds, polls, there's so much data. Mm-hmm. What feels different right now to you, Michael, than 2016 in terms of what we're seeing right now?
That's a great question because a lot of folks have, kind of lulled themselves back into that space in terms of how they worry about this race.
Yeah. It's a part of the PTSD.
It's a part of the PTSD, and I gotta work with my Democratic friends and help y'all through that.
All right,
okay?
All right,
it's gonna
thank
be
you.
okay.
Soothe us.
It's going to be okay. It is about the very things you talked about. That what's happening on the ground, the empirical evidence, the anecdotal evidence. In 2016, everything was off in that cycle. Mm-hmm. The polling was off. The mood was off. The voters were a little bit grumpy, and there were a lot of things that sort of moved the needle in a direction that a lot of people fed into this idea. If you were on the Democratic side, Hillary's got to win this, right? He's got to win this, and on the Republican side, it's like, oh my God, Trump's going to win this, and so there was that move. That's not this election. This is people right now it's very much to your point. The energy is very different on the ground in places like North Carolina, where the last poll out of North Carolina, the Democratic nominee is up by 2, right? Iowa, the Democratic nominee is up by 3. And you have to say, well, what's off? Well, it's not off because everyone feels better about this. Everyone feels good. I won't say everyone, but the mood is different than it was 8 years ago. And I think that says a lot about how in 107 days, Kamala Harris came out and she ran the race no one thought she could run.
Yeah.
And she ran it in a way in which she did not countenance interference from people who thought they knew better than her. She followed her instincts, and that's important for a candidate coming in, to follow their instincts and say, I'm just going to do me. I'm not going to do the standard pro forma stuff. I'm going to go out and when the press starts calling for me to sit down with them and talk to them because they're the most important thing in the room, I'm going to go to where the most important people are in the room, and that's the American people. And it changed everything.
Yeah, and one quick thing I would add is we're talking about the PTSD from the polls in 2016 and 2020. And I think we have all internalized that maybe a little bit too much because we assume, okay, all of the polls are going to underestimate Donald Trump's support. I don't know. Maybe they will tomorrow. But let me tell you what the polls have been like in 2022, 2023, and 2024. I worked on Tom Suozzi's special election in New York 3. Big race. He was the underdog, not expected to win.
Ran right into immigration.
Ran right into it. And going up to Election Day, the poll the day before showed him up 1 point. Republicans were crowing that their internals had him down 4. He ended up winning by 8 points. We also saw in 2022, Democrats vastly overperform the polls where they were. And what that tells me is that some of the polling underestimates the anger, the motivation that a lot of women feel to turn out, and that, frankly, a lot of people in the middle feel that Republicans have gone too far.
Women are pissed off. I'm just going to say that's my trigger.
We are.
Let me go to John Favreau because he's there, and he and I worked for a losing presidential campaign. It doesn't feel as good.